started. Hi, I'm Maris Kreisman, and I'm so thrilled to welcome you tonight to another excellent virtual event at McNally Jackson. If you go to McNallyJackson.com and look at our events calendar, you'll see all the amazing writers and programs we're hosting in the coming weeks. So please keep an eye on the site or subscribe to our newsletter to hear more about what's coming up soon. There will be time at the end of tonight's conversation for your questions, so start thinking about them now. You can put them in the Zoom chat at any time, and Jordan will get to them towards the end of the evening. We're so glad that even though we can't all be in the same room at the moment, we're still able to host events during this difficult time. As we've weathered the pandemic and reopened all 4 of our locations for browsing and shopping, indie bookstores like ours still need more support. And so if you enjoy free events like this one and want us to keep hosting more of them, please buy books from us. Throughout the evening, I will be posting links in the chat to buy books from some of tonight's readers from McNally Jackson. And I am so pleased to welcome you tonight to Pigeon Pages March event with 3 amazing writers. And your host for this evening is Jiordan Castle, the author of the chapbook, All His Breakable Things. Her work has appeared or is forthcoming in Hobart, HuffPost, New Ohio Review, The New Yorker, and elsewhere. She's an editor-at-large for Pigeon Pages and a contributor to the LA-based food and culture magazine, Compound Butter. Welcome to all.
Thank you so much to Maris and McNally Jackson, always, for making this Zoom event magical and possible. And just hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us tonight for the March Pigeon Pages reading. You all could be doing anything right now, and you chose to be here with us, and I just love that. Thank you. I'm so thrilled to have Kat Y. Tang, Megan Cummins, and Melissa Broder with us tonight to share their work. And we'll also have a moderated Q&A after everyone has read, at which point you're welcome to post questions in the chat, and I'll review those as they come in, and I'll ask any and all appropriate questions I can. There will also be links to buy books from tonight's authors directly from McNally Jackson, so please do consider buying a book or many books, just like you would, I hope you would, if you could, if we were doing this in person together. So just a few announcements before we get to our exciting readings. First off, Pigeon Pages is an all-volunteer reading series and online journal. Donations help make it possible to pay our contributors, fund our contests, and other good stuff like that. And if you're interested in donating to help fund those initiatives, you can do so online really easily. So I'll get a link in the chat in just a minute. And speaking of good stuff, our fiction contest, judged by the incredible C. Pam Zhang, author of How Much of These Hills is Gold, is going on right now until April 15th. So we also have a group funding initiative pioneered by our own wonderful editor-at-large, Hannah Bay, to cover submission fees for Black writers for that contest. So if that applies to you or a writer you know, please reach out to us. You can also go directly to pigeonpagesnyc.com to learn more about the contest and the Black Writers Fund. And last but never least, we are always open for general submissions, and we'd love to read your work. So with that, thank you all for being here with us. I'm going to bring out our first exciting reader of the night, and stay tuned at the very end for our Q&A. So up first, we have Kat Y. Tang, a reformed lawyer turned MFA fiction student at Columbia University. Her work has been published in Pigeon Pages and Driftwood Press. She is currently working on her first novel about how the people we meet in childhood never really leave us. Welcome, Kat.
Thank you. So today I'm going to be reading the beginning of a chapter of the novel that I'm currently working on. It's called Leftovers, and it was published as a short story by Pigeon Pages. And if you want to read the full, I'm going to end in kind of a middle spot. So if you want to read the full story, it is available on the Pigeon Pages website. Okay. Leftovers. I will never understand why my son decided to marry such a useless woman. All she does, day in and day out, is sit at home watching inane television shows while chewing popcorn with her mouth wide open, kernels falling to the couch and the floor around her like dandruff. The malnourished dog of theirs laps up the stray flakes. They call it a chihuahua, but with its scrawny body and giant head, it is more akin to a chihuahua, a queer doll. No one in my village would have touched a sickly-looking dog like that, even at the height of our starvation. Today, the television shows 4 women, faces painted like harlots, waving their hands while they talk around a table. They sit and talk and do nothing, much like the woman aspires to do. On days like this, I am glad that I have lost my hearing, so that I do not have to listen to these women quacking in their language, so harsh and grating with none of the melody and meaning of Mandarin. My head is bothering me more than usual this afternoon, but I cannot rest. If I do nothing, I will be just as bad as that woman. Instead, I will cook a meal for the ones I love, my little granddaughter and my son, who comes home starving from his demanding work as an engineer. As I shuffle slow, so slow, around the kitchen, I gather flour, eggs, water, chives, dried shrimp, and ground pork. Jiordan is their favorite. I remember the first time my son had one. Xiang was 6 years old, and it was the first time he ever ate meat. It upset his stomach so much, he threw it all up. Oh, how angry I was then. All the money I had saved to give my son his first taste of meat. But now, here I am, preparing jiaocai casually on a weekday night. I hum as I mix the ingredients for the dough. This is perhaps the worst part of losing my hearing. I cannot even hear myself. I wonder at times what my voice sounds like when I dare to use it. I'm afraid I sound simple, like Li Hong from our village, who was never the same after being beaten and raped by the Japanese. At least Xiang didn't marry a Japanese woman. Then I would have known for sure that he was trying to kill me. The woman is still sitting on the couch, but she has replaced one bag of popcorn with another, without even bothering to discard the first. Disgusting. She does not know or have what it takes to nourish a family. I place the kneaded dough in a bowl to rest and get to work on the filling. But as I finish mincing the chives, I turn and knock my carton of eggs to the floor. The woman looks in my direction and hurries to the kitchen. Her attention is in all the wrong places. She should be watching for my granddaughter teetering about. It is odd that I haven't seen the young one playing today. Ah, but of course, she must be in kindergarten. The woman is saying something now, as I can see her mouth working vigorously. She must have strong jaw muscles from all that chewing. She scoops up the carton and its few remaining unbroken eggs and starts putting it back in the fridge. I grab her arm. No, I say, or think I say, dinner. She shakes her head and says something loudly and slowly, her lips over-exaggerating each syllable. I'm hard of hearing, not an idiot, I want to tell her, but wouldn't understand. Finally, she leans in close to my hearing aid and I can see the veins on her neck bulging. Pizza, she yells, pizza for dinner. This cursed woman and her lazy ways. How many times can a family eat delivery before they wither from cancer or lack of love? No, my son and granddaughter deserve homemade food. I wrestle the carton away from the woman's claws and turn my back to her. I watch from the corner of my eye as she gives up and goes back to the TV, leaving the chihuahua to lap up the eggy mess. As I mix together the filling with my hands, I chastise myself for wasting perfectly good eggs. One more reason she could use to convince Xiang to send me to some old person's home. The little dried shrimp go into the mixture last. I can no longer see their curled up bodies clearly. At least I have not spilled those. It is an hour-long bus ride to the nearest Chinese market, and the bus drivers are rude and impatient. When I can, I like to bring my little granddaughter with me. People are nicer to the old when they are with the young, as though our ages average out to make us into real people. My granddaughter is wonderful, even though the woman gave her a name I cannot pronounce in an effort to wrest her away from me. Ai Mi Li, Sai, rice, beautiful, pure nonsense. The woman may have given my granddaughter a name, but I gave her my sharp, watchful eyes. My granddaughter once asked me why I push my way onto every bus, why I squeeze so closely to the person in front of me in line. But what is a line? If you don't push, I told her, you won't get anything. You always have to keep pushing forward, or else your family will starve. It seemed ridiculous to say in a supermarket that had 20 of everything, but I wanted to make sure that she understood this mentality. I worry that she has inherited some of her mother's weak genes. Putting away the perishable ingredients, I notice a photo of a young woman in a black cap and gown tacked to the fridge door. Not the woman, but someone else. When did these photos get here? And why does the young woman in the photos have Emily's eyes? Squinting to get a better look makes my headache worse. I will ask my son who this young woman is when he returns. I mustn't forget. After the dough rests, I pull it taut, then chop it into small rounds. I roll each one out into a disc and add just enough filling, not too much that they'll burst open like Xiao Peng's stomach when he died from finally eating a single bowl of rice. I've tried to explain this recipe to the woman, but she balked at the smell of the chives and scurried back to her spot on the couch. This was when I realized how useless she is. In our village, we used to eat charcoal to fill our stomachs, licking the black dust off our fingers, and yet she can't stand the smell of chives. Sharp filaments of pain shoot through my temples, but I refuse to sit down. If I focus on making dinner for Xiang, I can ignore it. I crimp the edges of each pocket to seal in the filling. When Xiang was accepted into graduate school in the United States, I was reluctant to let him go. We had suffered so much together, I felt our souls had fused. How could I let a piece of my soul fly across the ocean to a foreign land?
Thank you so much, Kat. I'm so glad that you read Leftovers. It's fantastic. I put a link in the chat. Everybody go and read Leftovers on your own if you can't get enough. Thank you. And next we have Megan Cummins, a writer and the managing editor of A Public Space. Her first book, If the Body Allows It, was awarded the 2019 Prairie Schooner Book Prize in Fiction and was longlisted for the Story Prize and the Penn Robert W. Bingham Prize for Debut Short Story Collection. Please welcome Megan.
So good to be here. And Kat, I can't wait to go read the rest of your novel excerpt. I'm so excited. So I'm going to read just part of a story from my book. It's called The Beast. And I think I may have read from it before when I did a virtual tour over the fall, but I have a soft spot for it. So I'm going to read from it again. So The Beast. 20 years had passed since I'd last seen the Beast. We were 17 and embarrassed by each other back then. I'd asked him to prom. He'd agreed on the conditions that I would cover expenses and that we would have sex. I'd accepted the terms, so we had shared one night together, me in an aqua spaghetti strap dress and him in a cheap rented tux. We both seemed to think we could have done better as we lay together in the motel bed, a foot of space between us. On a Sunday morning at my kitchen table all those years later, I turned a page in the New Plains record, and there he was. He'd become famous without my knowing it. His real name was Hadrian, and it was strange to see it in print. He and his band, a heavy metal group called Beastific, were doing what they called a rural terror tour. They played small venues outside of cities, or they rented barns far out in the country. I know we've played much bigger venues, noted Hadrian in the article, but we like the intimacy of a small place off the beaten track. Our fans do too. Beastific is about the people. Beastific, I said. Beastific? What are you saying? My husband asked. I hadn't heard him walk into the kitchen. He wore a bathrobe, though it was nearly noon. We slept like teenagers on weekends, throwing off our REM cycles and making Monday mornings hellish. Our jobs at offices eroded the idea that living a long life was a good thing. We just wanted to sleep and never wake up. The terms of our marriage had also included a no children clause, a stipulation that remained uncontested by either of us, even though boredom had come to our hearth like a sleeping dog. I'd assumed one of us would have a change of heart or that we'd make a mistake. An insurgent zygote would hold us at gunpoint and make us really decide if we meant it. But that never happened, and I told myself I didn't want children. What if I couldn't love them? Or worse, what if they didn't love me? Beverly, what are you thinking so hard about? Robert asked. You look like you want to kill someone. If you were going to name your band with a pun on the word beatific by spelling it like this, I held up the paper and pointed to the name in the headline. Would you expect people to pronounce the first part normally, like beast? Or the way you pronounce beatific, like beastific? I'm not sure I followed, he said. I just think it's asking a lot of people. Robert sat down across from me and tugged at the financial section until it came loose. We should unsubscribe from the paper, I said. Does this beast thing really upset you that much? It's not that, it's just garbage. They just write garbage and we can't afford to pay for garbage. We're actually doing okay money-wise right now, Robert said, so we can buy garbage if we want it. Do you know their music? No. Do you want to go see them play? Not really. I quickly folded the page and tucked it beneath the sports section. I'm making an Eggo. Do you want one? 2, Robert said. I took the box from the freezer and shook out a handful of waffles. Did the band's name mean Hadrian remembered me? The Beast had been my nickname for him. When he transferred to my school in the 11th grade, He had long chestnut brown hair and a chiseled looking face. He looked like the Beast from Beauty and the Beast after he turned back into a prince. A trace of rage had shimmered around him, but for the most part, the Beast was a quiet person. I meant to taunt him with the nickname because everyone else thought to make his life miserable, but then I grew fond of him. I thought of myself then as having one shy foot in the popular circle, so it was important to me that no one find out about my crush. I was mortified, of course, to realize I was in love with him, but this was before I knew I was neither popular nor unpopular, utterly nondescript. No one cared what I did or who I liked. The ringing phone brought me back to our kitchen in New Plains, Nebraska. I answered. I'm calling about an overdue balance on an American Express card, said the woman on the other end. She'd asked for me by name. She had a pleasant voice, but cool and firm. I know this is a scam, I said. I've never had an American Express card in my life. Goodbye. Again? Robert asked. Again, on a Sunday too. I looked it up on the internet. Apparently these scammers convince people to mail checks to them. I just Googled your credit score last week, Robert said. You're looking good. He put down the paper and grinned. Definitely looking good from here. From here was about as close as we came to each other these days. I'm going to skip just a few pages, but all you need to know is that she finds out that Robert has been running up a lot of credit card debt in her name, and that she secretly buys tickets to the show, and that she works for an insurance brokerage firm, and her boss is sort of like a divorced playboy with a lot of bad habits. The morning at work brought a problem with one of the clients, a parking service called Safely Park. Cal had brokered the policy, but now the carrier had canceled the general liability insurance because when the policy was initially signed, Cal had forged the loss runs to make it seem as though Safely Park had never had an accident or ever filed a claim. The Safely Park crashed cars all the time. Cal was furious when the notice of cancellation was faxed over. He snapped at the sales staff and the customer service reps. The general liability specialist emerged from Cal's office with her head hung. I caught her blotting tears in the kitchen. Somehow this was everyone's fault but Cal's and mine, though I'd used Photoshop to make the loss runs look clean. I'll end up in the slammer right next to Cal, I joked back then, but I grew nervous as the day went on. What if the carrier reported the fraudulent loss runs to the Department of Insurance? What if I did go to prison? Cal was on the phone all afternoon, calling in favor, saying he didn't know how the mistake had happened. Finally, he slapped the phone into its cradle, which I heard from my desk outside of his office. I turned to see him take his bottle of Grey Goose he kept in his desk, and he called out, "All clear, get out of here, you scoundrels." Everyone in the office clapped. I did too. We hated Cal when he yelled, and we loved him when he let us leave at 3 p.m., even if we'd almost gotten arrested earlier that day. I lingered, and when everyone except Cal had left, I checked my credit rating. There was the American Express card, the balance glowering at me, and beneath it a visa I didn't recognize. I began to cry. I'd gotten pregnant on prom night, the night I'd spent with Hadrian. I stayed pregnant for 12 weeks until I turned 18 and didn't need my parents. Getting rid of the baby then had been the right choice, but now having a baby would never be an option, would never be feasible. I wondered if I could sue Robert or put him in jail. But the truth was I was either bound to Robert, bound to the debt, or free of it, but on my own. I put my head in my hands. Beverly, are you okay? Cal had come out of his office. I swiped tears from my eyes and slowly gathered my things. Cal stood in his doorway, clutching the bottle of Grey Goose by his side. I avoided his eyes as I slipped my arms into my jacket. Yep, I was just worried about today. I didn't mean to do anything wrong. You didn't do anything wrong. Everything's really okay, I asked. Oh, Bevy, he said, I would never throw you under the bus. If the DOI came for you, they'd have to go through me first. Of course, I said. What a day, he said as he swung the bottle of vodka to his mouth. I need to go get a drink somewhere. I looked at him closely and saw tears brimming in his eyes. I'm going to a concert tonight. I didn't know why I was telling him, but I knew I didn't want to see him cry. I hadn't told Robert about the show, and as I spoke, I knew I wasn't going to. What band? Someone's I knew a long time ago. I don't think the music will be very good. Sounds fun. I have an extra ticket. It's all the way in New Plains, though. Sunlight pierced the window behind Cal's head. He appeared to be thinking. We didn't want each other. If we did, something would have happened by now. We just wanted to be a little less lonely. We just wanted something different than what we had. Cal and I ate dinner at the hotel bar, Cal guzzling vodka sodas, and then I drove us to the venue, a barn just outside of New Plains. I parked in a roped off grass lot that spread away from the barn. Clusters of wild violets sprouted in the fields surrounding. Teenagers in heavy black boots stomped over them. Cal had fallen asleep on the way, and I sat in the car with the engine clicking, embarrassed that I'd cried, and surprised that I'd felt so strongly that I'd lost someone upon seeing my ruined credit, the rating persistently red on the screen. In a life of blind, vague longings, I'd seen clearly something I'd wanted, only to have it taken away. I nudged Cal awake. Ready, or would you rather stay here? I'm ready. The barn teemed with teenagers all wearing black. They'd painted their faces to look like skulls, and some wore devil's horns like I'd seen Hadrian wearing in the picture in the paper. I trudged in my pumps and nylons toward the door, Cal trailing behind, looking ill. The last of the sun fell on a boy selling t-shirts adorned with the band name. The T in beatific was an upside down Gothic cross. These kids look kind of fucked up, Cal said. He pointed to a group of girls staring ghoulishly from within the hoods of their sweatshirts, their eyes rimmed with heavy black eyeliner. What parents would let their kids go out dressed like that? I thought of Cal's daughters and wondered what their futures would bring. Now they wore matching sapphire rings, Christmas gifts from Cal. What would they trade those rings for when the time came? They probably think we're parents who wouldn't let their kids go on their own, I said. They probably wonder who here is the loser who brought mom and dad. I warmed at the thought that one of these kids could be my own. I'd noticed a few women in parked cars, piles of coats in the back seats. Well, I'm going to find the bar, Cal said. One long note resounded from inside the barn. The show had begun. I stood in the back and watched Hadrian sing into a microphone that was swinging from the ceiling. His face was the same face, strong chin, sunken eyes, high cheekbones. He was wearing his hair long again. He still looked boyish. I became, once again, the girl who wanted him, the girl who had teased him out of love. But standing there, I also felt the presence of all the time we'd been apart. We'd never even known each other in the first place. I'd had nothing to do with his angst, and now I was not the wicked bitch he sang about. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Megan. I think I just want the phone to ring and for it to be a scam so I can just yell, I know this is a scam, and just freak out. So thank you for this so much. So we have our final reader of the night, after which we will have our moderated Q&A. So think about your questions and get them in the chat when the time comes. But first, we have Melissa Broder, the author of the novels Milk-Fed and the Pisces, the essay collection So Sad Today, and 5 poetry collections, including SUPERDOOM, selected poems, coming this summer from Tin House. She lives in Los Angeles. Broder has written for the New York Times, Elle.com, Vice, Vogue Italia, and New York Magazine's The Cut. She is currently developing Milk-Fed as a TV series with Best Day Ever, ABC Signature. Please welcome Melissa.
Hi. Great to be here. This is such a lovely event, and I've really enjoyed both of the readings so far. So thank you for having me. This is, I'm going to read from Milk-Fed, this book, and this Milk-Fed has a boob on the cover. The only thing you need to know for this scene is that my girl Rachel, who's like my protagonist, is like more of a mall Jew. She's a Jew, but she's more of like a mall Jew than like a Talmud Jew. And she's sleeping over in the basement of her crush's family's house. And her crush's family are Orthodox Jews. And she like just went over there for Shabbat. And now she's sleeping over in the basement. And she's like really horny. Okay, hold on. Okay. And her name's Rachel and her crush is Miriam. And if I cut out, I don't know. I hope I don't cut out because my internet was unstable. That is a mitzvah. It's actually a mitzvah to have sex on Shabbat. That is true. Okay. Miriam had bungled the light timer. Now the Schwebel's basement was pitch black. I thought about turning on the bathroom light, but I didn't want to break Shabbat in their house. I figured light was more of a big deal than heat, since it was the first thing that God did in the Bible or whatever. I felt my way in the dark to the toilet and peed in the blackness. I wasn't going to be able to brush my teeth. On my way out, I stepped on one of Miriam's brother's toys and it squeaked noisily. After the squeak, I heard a giggle. Then Miriam's voice called down from upstairs. Rachel, is that you? I saw a light beaming from the top of the stairs. What are you doing down there in the dark? She called. Let me bring a candle. I heard her tiptoe down the stairs. Then I saw her white feet in the dark. She was wearing a pair of baby blue cotton pajamas and was holding a pair of tea light candles in small glass jars. She had no bra on, and her breasts and belly heaved up and down. Here, she said, handing me the candles. Sorry, I'm bad with the timer. Thanks, I said. Is this bed all right? She asked me. Everything is great, I said, so comfortable. Good, she said, I want you to feel at home here. I put the candles on top of the nightstand, which was really an end table that had been pulled next to the sofa bed. I sat down on the bed, but did not invite her to come sit with me. I felt nervous and strange, but also excited to have her so close and unbound near me in the candlelight. She was wearing underwear, and I could see them through her pajamas. I could tell that they were full underwear, like granny panties, and I couldn't help but think about what the smell of her pussy was like under there. I wondered if she was wet. Then I felt guilty for wondering that. You're sure you're not creeped out down here? She asked. No, I said. Why don't I just stay until you fall asleep? She sat down on a cushiony chair across from the sofa bed. Okay, I said, but I didn't get under the covers. I imagined going over to the chair, facing her and rubbing up against her body like a cat. I imagined grabbing the back of her head and kissing her forcefully, our teeth clicking together, her gorgeous tongue in my mouth. I imagined opening her pajama top and seeing those tremendous breasts, sucking them. Why don't you get into bed? She asked. Okay, I said. I lifted up the sheets and blankets, crawled under them. Miriam did not stand up or make any effort to tuck me in, and yet I felt as though she were somehow tucking me in from across the room. I watched her body moving gently up and down with each breath, her pale blue eyes so clear in the candlelight, like glass. I could hear her breathing too, as though she were trying to lull me to sleep with the rhythm. Comfy? She asked. Good, she said. Tell me a story, I said. Really? I hoped I wasn't pushing it, but I was in such a blissful space, and if I couldn't touch her, then I wanted the room filled with her words. Yes, I said. Okay, she asked. Do you want a story about animals or a story about plants? Animals, I said. What I really wanted was to slide my hand under my waistband and rest it there, to comfort myself, help myself drift off. But I was afraid that she would see the bump in the sheet where my hand was and be disturbed. Also, I didn't trust myself to simply cocoon my vagina with my hand without rubbing. I was wet and would have loved to gently rub my clit, light and fast. Instead, I settled for wrapping my arms around my upper body, like Dracula in his coffin, only sweet. It felt nice, the warmth of a hug. I sucked my nicotine gum. There was a woman who lived in a village, she began. She was about our age. They're like 24. It was a village outside of Los Angeles, but not in Orange County or the Valley. It was a village that had all palm trees and no other kind of tree. It was the only one in Southern California without any other kind of tree or bush except palm trees. She stopped for a second. Sorry, she said. I veered into plants. I'll get to animals in a minute. That's fine, I said. This woman was looking to bring some other types of trees to the village, particularly, what are those? Oh, evergreens. But none of the other villagers wanted them there. They didn't understand why she wanted any other kind of tree when palm trees were so beautiful. In fact, one or two other kinds of shrubs had started to grow there over the years, and the people had gone so far as to rip them out. This woman reminded the rest of the people that the other kinds of trees, including evergreens, were native to Los Angeles, whereas palm trees had been brought over from somewhere else. But it didn't matter to them. I heard her swallow. Also, this woman couldn't figure out why she even cared so much about other kinds of trees. The only thing she could come up with was that when she looked at a palm tree, she always felt like the palm tree was laughing at her. But when she looked at an evergreen tree, she felt like it was on her side. Uh-oh. What? Maybe this is going to be about plants. Sorry. Anyway, one night this woman went to see her aunt. Her aunt was the only person who didn't shut her down entirely when she said that she wanted to go to another town and get a baby sapling evergreen tree and bring it to this village, which, by the way, was illegal according to the ordinance of the town. Her aunt didn't understand her fascination with evergreens, but she understood what it was like to really want something, because when the aunt was younger, she had wanted to marry a person but had been forced by her parents to marry someone else. So her aunt tried to be compassionate towards her. At the same time, she didn't want this woman to go to jail for bringing another kind of tree. Jail, I said. It was serious business, said Miriam. Okay, I said, keep going. The aunt's name was Pua, by the way, said Miriam. Pua? Yes, her name was Pua Feinstein. What about the tree woman's name, I asked. I don't know, said Miriam. How about Esther? Okay, I said, one more question. Why didn't Esther just move to a place where evergreens were allowed and she felt more comfortable? She didn't want to move, said Miriam. It's hard for a woman to move, to just separate from her family, stuff like that. Yeah, I guess so, I said, but I mean, how badly did Esther want these evergreens? Maybe rather than risking going to jail or always being upset that she couldn't have the evergreens, she could just go somewhere else to another town and be amongst them there. Well, maybe it wouldn't have made her happy to move to another town, said Miriam. I get it, I said. Anyway, said Miriam, so Aunt Pua decided that she was going to have to find a way to stall Esther on her plan. So she told Esther that she should wait for a sign before she went and dug up a tree and brought it over. Aunt Pua instructed her to go to sleep each night and wait until in her dreams there appeared a bull. Okay, I think this is where the animals come in. Okay. Aunt Pua told Esther that if she saw a bull in a dream and the bull was gentle and kind to her, then it was probably safe to go steal a sapling and bring it back. But if she dreamt that the bull was cruel and vicious or tried to attack her in any way, that meant it was a bad omen. If the bull was violent, then she should in no way attempt to bring an evergreen tree into the town, or she would surely be punished terribly. Shit. Aunt Pua thought she was being clever. After all, everyone knows bulls are never gentle and they are always charging at you on the attack. So she figured that the dream would never come. What were the chances of Esther dreaming of a bull anyway? Probably very slim, I said. Yeah, said Miriam, like a 15% chance maximum. More like 10%, I said. Right. And you know what? Aunt Pua was correct. Not only did Esther never dream about a bull being nice to her, but she never ended up dreaming about a bull at all. Every night she waited for a bull to come to her in her dream and it never did. And actually, in doing this, in waiting for the bull, Esther's interest shifted from evergreens to bulls, and she was set free. She was no longer haunted by the need to have an evergreen. Okay, what do you think? What do you mean? I said. About the story. Wait, that's it? Yeah, that's how it ends? Esther never goes to get her evergreen? Right, she said. What kind of story is that? I mean, how passionate was Esther about the evergreen if she just ended up forgetting them? Pretty passionate, said Miriam. I mean, she really loved them. Well, she obviously didn't love them that much. No, she did, said Miriam. It's just that, she didn't want to ruin her life for the evergreens. Oh, I said, okay. You seem upset, she said. No, I'm not. It's just, I don't know. I was kind of expecting it to end with her planting an evergreen and everyone in the town eventually coming to love it. Or at least Aunt Pua would see its appeal. The town was never going to love it. Or Aunt Pua. Fine. So Esther should have just stayed or should have just left and stayed away. I told you, said Miriam, there was no way she was going to do that. Well, it's kind of a sad story then, I said. Not as sad if she had gone to jail or if she had never seen her family again. It's a good ending. Esther has her family and she doesn't get punished. And since she isn't so in love with the evergreens anymore, it's not like she's suffering. She got over it. She has bulls now. She can become a bullologist. The town has no problem with bulls. Fine, I said. I felt angry. Was I annoyed that Miriam couldn't tell a good story, or was I pissed off by the story itself? Well, I'm going to go upstairs, she said. Okay, I said. Sleep well, she said. You too, I murmured. After she went back upstairs, I rolled over onto my side and put my hand down my pants. I was still wet. Some of the anger was maybe desire, trapped in there with nowhere to go. I rubbed my clit and the opening of my vulva quickly, not thinking about any images, only the anger and the feeling down there. Then I imagined Miriam, not from the front, but from the back, lying fully nude on a bed with her hair wet. No, I would not allow myself to fantasize about her in her parents' basement. Instead, I imagined another woman, one I'd never seen before, who had the same body as Miriam, but with very dark hair. Yes, I would create a woman right there in the Schwebel's basement. Esther. I was going to fuck Esther. I rolled over onto my stomach and put one of the pillows between my legs. I was the Rabbi Judah Lo Ben Bezalel of that fucking pillow. The Rabbi Judah Lo is a rabbi who appears to her in dreams throughout the book. He's from the 16th century. I was Adam and the pillow was my rib or whatever. From that pillow, I could create my dream woman. I imagined how Esther's ass would look, how big and round, like two gibbous moons. I imagined rubbing my pussy against each of her ass cheeks, humping and riding them. I realized that in my fantasy, Esther was not saying a word. It figured since she'd been so passive with the evergreens. Did I want Esther to speak? No, I liked it like this. Her silence, her passivity, allowing me to move freely and have my way with her body. I felt no judgment from Esther, totally free to do what I wished. Also, Aunt Pua was dead. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I can think of no better story before we get to Passover. Everyone, you must read Milk Fed in preparation for Passover this weekend, please. With that, we have, I think, 18 minutes for Q&A. Amanda has already set the bar very high in the chat. So consider, as you have questions for any of our readers tonight, please get them in the chat. Let's start it off for everybody here. How do all of our readers tonight deal with their protagonist's lies or misconceptions? How do you decide who knows what and when? I love these questions. So whoever wants to answer first.
I'll answer first, if that's okay. I thought that's such a great question. It's so interesting. And I think that my characters kind of come built, like they're liars by default. You know, like many of my characters, I think, are like liars or secret keepers. And I think it's because I like that tension of that living in that space where between revealing the truth or living with untruths. And I love the thought of like when and how do you reveal it. And I think it's like when it becomes more interesting for the story to have it revealed and have it opened up than like have that character living or like simmering in that like space of lying or keeping a secret. But I didn't, until I read that question, I hadn't really thought before that like, yeah, I don't even really think of them as like having like being liars, but many of them are. Like it's just by default.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, I think that's such a great question, and one that I've been thinking about a lot, just because a lot of my characters in this novel that I'm working on have some form of, I don't know, self-delusion, even down to like paranoia. And it's just fun to kind of play with that line of like, what as a reader are you being told is the truth versus like what is actually happening in a scene. And I think it's just so fun to kind of play around with, because in a sense, you know, I think we all lie to ourselves, and you know, our worldview is just one view of many. So it's something that I am working on as well, of like when to reveal that and when to get that dramatic irony up of like, you know, the reader knows something is up, but the character doesn't know that yet, that the reader knows. But yeah, I think that's such a great thing to keep in mind while writing.
I forgot the question.
Oh, let's go back. How do all of our readers tonight deal with their protagonist's lies or misconceptions, and how do you decide who knows what and when?
That's a really good question. I don't know. I'm still like learning how to write fiction, you know, like I come from a poetry background, and I feel like the biggest challenges for me are like events and like suspense, because like when you write a poem, like nothing has to happen. Well, like something happens, but it can be completely internal, you know. And then like I'm writing prose, and I'm just like, wait, another thing has to happen. Wait, another. So like I'm still learning how to like create suspense and what to reveal when, right? Like I never want to fuck with the reader. I always want to be like friends with the reader. But like, so what do you do? Like when the reader knows, like, you know, like I'm still learning. Like I guess just I would say read Patricia Highsmith.
That's a really good answer. For most things, honestly, I think that's a very good answer.
That's where I'm learning. That's where I'm learning. Oh, and yeah, Patricia Highsmith is teaching me that.
That's so good. Well, this is good. So there is a question in the chat just from Melissa, and then I have a question for all three of you. I'm so curious about the role of Anna and her relationship. It's Anna, right? Yeah. Anna and her relationship with or to Rachel. Was naming her Anna intentional? Am I totally reading too much into things, or was she meant to be some sort of physical manifestation of Rachel's eating disorder? Interesting.
Okay, so and will you guys like signal to me if you can't hear me, because it says my internet connection's weird.
Oh,
so
good.
It says I'm good.
Yeah.
Okay, it says it's unstable. All right. So Anna in the book Milk Fed is a woman at Rachel's office who Rachel has mommy issues, and like so she like projects her mother onto like everyone. So Anna is like a woman she has projected her mother onto. And Anna's definitely like, if Rachel's mother like sort of is like a bad influence by a bad influence by like giving her like negative what's the opposite of validation, like critique, like just like a bitch, then like Anna like gives her like is a bad influence by giving her positive, like positively affirming all of her like bad habits, and Rachel like wants to fuck Anna because she has a mommy thing. But so I didn't even name her Anna on purpose. That just like happened. So it wasn't like any reference to Rachel's ED, but it was a happy accident.
Yeah, lovely. Well, I think, as you said, coming from a poetry background, still learning to do fiction, I'm curious for all of you, do you have a first reader or a group of people? I know, Kat, for you, it's different, obviously, maybe your cohort, but if there is a reader that you're writing for or someone you trust your work with when it's still in draft mode, who might that be? How does that work for all of you?
Well, mine is obvious because I have to produce work for an MFA program. So my readers are my cohort, who some of them are here right now. Yay, MFA. So yeah, I think that the interesting thing for me will be, finding the people in the cohort who I want to continue to have read my stuff and whose stuff I also love going forward. So I feel really lucky that I have, people who are actually interested in reading my writing around me.
Yeah, that's so, it's so great to be able to leave a program like an MFA program and still have that kind of cohort. From my MFA, my friend Laura and Andreas, I see them here, and we, for a while, we would trade some work. I've been working on a novel for the past like 3 years, and I haven't let anyone read it until recently. And my good friend Sarah Blakely Cartwright read a draft of it, and she helped me too. She sort of read some of the final revisions I was doing for this book. She sort of read, and we had some conversations about it, but it's hard to, know when to like kind of let go of it, know when to, when it's time to show someone, and, being able to articulate like what you want to get out of that. Are you in a stage where you feel like it needs to be totally revamped? Or are you looking more for like more micro elements? And like when you find your readers and can kind of like intuit and like talk through that with you, it's such a blessing. But for the most part, I'm like very, very slow to let things go and to like let other people read them, for better or for worse. So, or for both. Yeah.
Thank you. I think we might have lost Melissa. If not, let me know, Melissa. I think maybe we temporarily lost Melissa, but we're going to go to the next question, and hopefully we will get Melissa back. This question, this is a big question given the pandemic and the country that we live in together as human people. How do you endure and find time to read, edit, and write during times of duress and chaos? That's a very big question. It's a good question.
I mean, I had, a teacher, a former teacher of mine named Thisbe Nissen gave some advice once. I was, struggling with, I don't know if you want to call it writer's block or what. And, I've always thought about this, where she said it's as important to know when not to write as when to write. And I definitely know like a lot of people that I know have been, they've been able to be productive and sort of, in these times of these really difficult times of duress. It's, writing, reading, editing can be like real, like ballast, it can be ballast, for someone, but maybe not everyone. And so I think like allowing yourself to like accept that not like certain times might not be a like quote unquote productive time for you. It's you're still thinking, you're still maybe thinking about your work, you're still living, experiencing, which is all part of writing. So it's not very, like, it's not really a practical advice, I guess, of like maybe how to do it, but that's helped me a lot for the past year, because I haven't written much the past year, so.
Yeah, I think that's great. I think any kind of emotional answer like that is human and helpful. Kat, did you want to respond to this?
Yeah, I feel very lucky because I do have a lot of time that's dedicated to writing right now. Like, I was a lawyer before, and back then I would write kind of like after work or sort of whenever I could, but now I can wake up in the morning and, you know, even if I know it's going to be like a really bad writing day, I just sit down and I like write. And even as I'm writing a sentence, I'm like, this is terrible. But like, I tell myself like, okay, I'm getting it down, maybe something good will come out of it. And then the next day when I go back and I revise it again, I have something to work off of rather than nothing at all. So I think I'm kind of more of like a regimented person like that. So I try to get some writing done every day if possible. But that being said, like when events in the world are happening that make me really angry or upset, or I just can't do my fiction, I've recently started trying poetry. And so, yeah, all my like anger and frustration goes into my poems. And then I try to be a little bit more level-headed for my fiction.
That's great. That's a good answer. Always just switch genres if you need to take that breather.
Or painting.
We might have Melissa back.
I'm back. Sorry, my internet died, but it's back.
No, that's amazing. I love it. Your face just popped up like magic for me.
Yeah.
Well, if you want to answer that one, did you get the question or no?
Is it like how we keep writing?
Yeah. Yes, that's a good, yes, that's the summary. Yeah.
Well, okay, so I'm very into little chunks. Like with like my book, The PISCES, and with Milk Fed actually, I always dictate my first drafts because I like to get the clay down and then I sculpt later. And I dictated 3 paragraphs a day, mostly like in my car. I treat it like it's an old shoe. Like I have to make it as casual, the first draft as casual as possible, and allow myself as much, because I'm such a perfectionist and I'm so hard on myself. So I have to like literally find ways to trick that part of me and being like, no, I'm not writing. Like I'm just in my car, like, or like I'll be like out running and I'm like, you know, passing people and I'm like vagina, you know, and like dictating. And so, yeah, so play down, sculpt later. And then, yeah, and I guess like low self-esteem keeps me going too, because like I never feel like I'm enough. So I like, if you know what I'm saying, like I feel like low self-esteem will always like keep food on my table on some level. Like I haven't figured out yet how to motivate like without a fear, without like not coming from like my own fear of like not enoughness, right? Like I feel like that is in some way like tied into my creativity, but I don't recommend that.
Oh, that's fantastic and really human. And these are great answers. Thank you all for this. We only have 5 minutes left, so I'm going to pick one of my many to talk about. Well, so one, I'm curious for Megan and Melissa with If the Body Allows It and Milk Fed, what were some of the challenges during the writing process? But also on the flip side, were there any wonderful, magical things that happened? I think it's interesting to hear about like you dictating paragraphs of the book. That's not everyone's process. So I'm curious about those 2 books, the making of it for both of you. Yeah.
You want me to go first in case my internet dies again?
Sure.
I'll go first. So this was more, I worked harder on this book than I've ever worked on anything. Like that first draft, it was 9 months of the dictation, but I probably edited it like 30 times and at least. And with myself, with my agent, with my editor, and then like every time I thought I was like out of the weeds and I'd just be going back to like for a little prune, I was sent back into the weeds and would have like a minor nervous breakdown. But the truth is, there's actually no other place I'd rather be than the weeds. Like I fucking love the weeds, but I forget that I love the weeds. So when I'm not in the weeds and I'm told I have to go back into the weeds, there's a grief. Yeah, so it's sort of like, again, just like tricking the self, right? Like sometimes like it's just about turning that faucet on, right? And sometimes it's like really hard to get into the bathroom. I mean, I don't know, that's a bad metaphor, because like it's not that hard to turn a faucet on, but you know what I'm saying. Once it's on, once you're in it, it's all good. But like getting in there, you know, it can be tough.
Yeah, you have to fucking love the weeds, truly. Yeah, thank you. And Megan, for you?
That's a great way to think about it, loving the weeds. I love that. So I came out of my MFA with like a couple stories, but like not a book, you know. I wasn't working on a novel. I wasn't even really working on like a collection or anything. And I was living in Newark at the time. I did my MFA at Rutgers Newark, and I sort of wrote a couple of these stories that were kind of like about a woman, and they were fiction, but they had like some autobiographical things in them. And this character just like kept sticking with me, and I kept wanting to write about her. And it was very, very influenced by place and by, you know, the apartment that she lived in, which was sort of based on the apartment I lived in. And actually, I think my old landlord is here in the Zoom. Hi, Zameen. And so I just kept writing about this character in this place. And that place had been very influential on me. And then I realized that the book was going to have this frame of this character. And I wanted to explore like different ways of like fictionalizing autobiography and what you can learn about autobiography by making things up and like turning some of it into fiction, and like what that tells you about yourself and writing. And so I did that, and the other stories in the book, including the one that I run from, sort of fictionally became the ones that this character had written, you know, because she is a writer too. And it wasn't until I just like that character's voice got in my head that all of a sudden it felt like I had a book. And even though it took like another couple of years of like writing and revising, like as soon as I had that in my head, I was like, yes, this is the book. And I was definitely in the weeds, but you know, I loved it.
That's great. I think that's a great place to leave us, is loving the weeds. I want to thank you three so much, and Maris, McNally Jackson, for having us.
Bless your pet.
Oh my, and we have Busy. Oh, the
Where
real
is
star.
she? Yay!
Oh, this is amazing. This is what made it a star event. We were trending that way, but this is like peak Busy the
She's
Plug.
like a little seal.
Oh, my heart. Oh, it's dog o'clock here. I hope you're all seeing this right now. This is incredible.
I better go. Thank you all. Please buy books from McNally Jackson if you can.
Yes. Thank you all so much. And we'll see you next month.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.